The title of the first poem is Morning Sailing into Xinyung. It's an English translation from a Chinese poem by Wang Wei. Wang Wei is an 8th century poet. As my boat sails in Yangtze Lake, I'm stunned by this glorious city. A canal meanders by narrow kayak doors. Fires and smoke crowd the water. In these people, I see strange customs, and the dialect here is obscure. In late autumn, fields are abundant. Morning, light. Noise wakes at the city wells. Fish merchants float on the waves. Chickens and dogs. Villages on either bank. I'm heading away from white clouds. What will become of my solitary sail? The title of the second one is Never Again Would Birds' Song Be the Same by Robert Frost. He would declare and could himself believe that the birds there in all the garden round, from having heard the day-long voice of Eve, had added to their own an oversong. Her tone of meaning, but without the words, admittedly, an eloquence so soft, could only have had an influence on birds. When call or laughter carry it along, be that as may be, she was in their song. Moreover, her voice upon their voices crossed, had now persisted in the woods so long, that probably would never be lost. Never again would birds' song be the same, and to do that to birds was why she came.
This is number 9 from Selected Prayers and Sayings of the Mad Farmer by Wendell Berry. Sowing the seed, my hand is one with the earth. Wanting the seed to grow, my mind is one with the light. Hoeing the crop, my hands are one with the rain. Having cared for the plants, my mind is one with the air. Hungry and trusting, my mind is one with the earth. Eating the fruit, my body is one with the earth. This is Her First Calf by Wendell Berry. Her fate seizes her and brings her down. She is heavy with it. It wrings her. The great weight is heaved out of her. It eases. She moves into what she has become, sure in her fate now, as a fish free in the current. She turns to the calf who is broken out of the womb's water and its veil. He breathes. She licks his wet hair. He gathers his legs under him and rises. He stands and his legs wobble. After the months of his pursuit of her, now they meet face to face. From the beginnings of the world, his arrival and her welcome have been prepared. They have always known each other.
I'm going to read from Blossoms by Yeung Li. From Blossoms comes this brown paper bag of peaches we bought from the boy at the bend in the road, where we turned toward signs painted peaches. From laden boughs, from hands, from sweet fellowship in the bins, comes nectar at the roadside. Succulent peaches we devour, dusty skin and all, comes the familiar dust of summer, dust we eat. Oh, to take what we love inside, to carry within us an orchard, to eat not only the skin, but the shade, not only the sugar, but the days, to hold the fruit in our hands, adore it, then bite into the round jubilance of peach. There are days we live as if death were nowhere in the background. From joy to joy to joy, from wing to wing, from blossom to impossible blossom, to sweet, impossible blossom.
I will read a poem by Richard Blanco. Okay. This poem was written for the second presidential inauguration of Barack Obama, and it was read on January 21st, 2013. One sun rose on us today, kindled over our shores, peeking into the Smokies, greeting the faces of the Great Lakes, spreading a simple truth across the Great Plains, then charging across the Rockies. One light, waking up rooftops, under each one a story told by our silent gestures moving behind windows. My face, your face, millions of faces in morning's mirrors, each one yawning to life, crescendoing into our day. Pencil-colored school buses, the rhythm of traffic lights, fruit stands, apples, limes, and oranges arranged like rainbows, begging our praise. Silver trucks, heavy with oil or paper, bricks or milk, teeming over highways alongside us on our way to clean tables, read ledgers, or save lives, to teach geometry or ring up groceries as my mother did for 20 years so I could write this poem. All of us as vital as the one light we move through. The same light on blackboards with lessons for the day, equations to solve, history to question, or atoms imagined. The I have a dream we keep dreaming, or the impossible vocabulary of sorrow that won't explain the empty desks of 20 children marked absent today and forever. Many prayers, but one light breathing color into stained glass windows, life into the faces of bronze statues, warmth onto the steps of our museums and park benches as mothers watch children slide into the day. One ground, our ground, rooting us to every stalk of corn, every head of wheat sown by sweat and hands, hands gleaning coal or planting windmills and deserts and hilltops that keep us warm, hands digging trenches, routing pipes and cables, hands as worn as my father's cutting sugarcane so my brother and I could have books and shoes. The dust of farms and deserts, cities and plains, mingled by one wind, our breath. Breathe. Hear it through the day's gorgeous din of honking cabs, buses launching down avenues, the symphony of footsteps, guitars, and screeching subways, the unexpected songbird on your clothesline. Hear squeaky playground swings, trains whistling, or whispers across cafe tables. Hear the doors we open for each other all day, saying hello, shalom, buongiorno, howdy, namaste, or buenos dias in the language my mother taught me. In every language spoken into one wind, carrying our lives without prejudice, as these words break from my lips. One sky, since the Appalachians and Sierras claimed their majesty, and the Mississippi and Colorado worked their way to the sea. Thank the works of our hands, weaving steel into bridges, finishing one more report for the boss on time, stitching another wound or uniform, the first brushstroke on a portrait, or the last floor on the Freedom Tower, jutting into a sky that yields to our resilience. One sky toward which we sometimes lift our eyes, tired from work, some days guessing at the weather of our lives, some days giving thanks for a love that loves you back, sometimes praising a mother who knew how to give, or forgiving a father who couldn't give what you wanted. We head home through the gloss of rain or weight of snow or the plum blush of dusk, but always home under one sky, our sky, and always one moon, like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one country. All of us facing the stars, hope, a new constellation waiting for us to map it, waiting for us to name it together.
A few years back, I found a book of 100 Japanese poems. I always wonder when I read translations what the poems would have sounded like in the original language. But these poems were translated by Kenneth Rexroth, who was a poet himself, but also an essayist and a translator. He translated some poems from Greek also. But these are his notes from the poems. I should like the poems in this collection to stand as poetry in English, and even, in a sense, as poetry by a contemporary American poet, because I have chosen only those poems with which I felt considerable identification. I'll not try to read the names of the poets, but each poem is a separate verse, and I'll try to pause so that we know when we're moving from one poet to the next. I may live on until I long for this time in which I am so unhappy and remember it fondly. As I watch the moon shining on pain's myriad paths, I know that I am not alone, involved in autumn. I've always known that at last I would take this road, but yesterday I did not know that it would be today. It does not matter that I am forgotten, but I pity his forlorn life. When I first see new moon faint in the twilight, I think of the moth eyebrows of the girl I saw only once. In the wind, like snow, the thing that falls away is myself. And here's one that hits me. A strange old man stops me, looking out of my deep mirror.
Okay, I'm going to read Ox Cart Man by Donald Hall. In October of the year, he counts potatoes dug from the brown field, counting the seed, counting the seller's portion out, and bags the rest on the cart's floor. He packs wool sheared in April, honey in combs, linen, leather tanned from deer hide, and vinegar in a barrel hooped by hand at the forge's fire. He walks by his ox's head 10 days to Portsmouth Market and sells potatoes and the bag that carried potatoes, flaxseed, birch brooms, maple sugar, goose feathers, yarn. When the cart is empty, he sells the cart. When the cart is sold, he sells the ox, harness, and yoke, and walks home, his pockets heavy with the year's coin, the salt, and taxes. And at home by fire's light in November cold, stitches new harness for next year's ox in the barn, and carves the yoke and saws planks, building the cart again. And now the last poem in this program that I'm going to read is one that is actually about the pandemic in a volume that was published about a number of poems who wrote number of poets who wrote poems during the pandemic. This particular one is the most hopeful, I thought, in the whole volume, and so I've chosen it. It is by Kitty O'Meara, and it's called And the People Stayed Home. And the people stayed home, and they listened and read books and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still. And they listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. So that is our program for this month, and we thank you for coming, and we'll be back next month, and maybe with still more new beginnings.